What if the very thing you've been praying for, peace, clarity, control, is the same thing that's secretly keeping you imprisoned? What if freedom, real freedom, is not a gift wrapped in divine comfort, but a silent, relentless fire that demands everything you are? Tonight we are not here to feel safe. We are not here to be reassured. We are here to be undone. Because somewhere beneath your routines, your beliefs, and the stories you tell yourself to fall asleep at night, there is a cry, a buried cry. It is not loud, it is not violent, but it is constant, and it whispers this: you were born free, but you are not living free. That voice is not your anxiety. That voice is not fear. That voice is the ghost of your unlived life. You see, freedom is not an open door. Freedom is the courage to walk through it, knowing that on the other side, no one is waiting to save you, not even God. Sartre knew this. He did not offer comfort, he offered confrontation. He tore apart the illusion that we are victims of the world, and instead showed us a mirror. The world is not happening to you, the world is responding to you. Every choice you make, or avoid making, is a thread in the web of your own becoming. And yet, so many of us refuse to choose. We hide behind obedience. We call it faith. But is it? Or is it fear disguised in holy language? Fear of responsibility, fear of the unknown, fear of the unbearable lightness of being truly, terrifyingly free. There is no savior in the philosophy of Sartre. And perhaps that is the most spiritual truth of all. Because when no one comes to rescue you, when the heavens are silent, when the sacred texts offer no guarantee, what remains? You, your breath, your awareness, your naked soul standing in the desert of existence, stripped of illusion, trembling beneath the weight of meaninglessness.
And yet, still breathing. That is where this journey begins, not in the promise of redemption, but in the confrontation with nothingness. And it is in that nothingness that the spark ignites, not because something out there saves you, but because
something in you refuses to die. That refusal, that choice, is what Sartre called radical freedom. And it is not soft, it is not safe, it is not comfortable, but it is holy. This video is not here to answer your questions. It is here to ruin the questions themselves, to peel away the layers of borrowed belief and reveal the raw, terrifying beauty of your own responsibility. Sartre did not write for the cowards of comfort. He wrote for the warriors of consciousness. For those who are willing to sit in the dark long enough to realize that they are the light. For those who are willing to accept that freedom is not something given. It is something taken, earned, suffered for. And if you're still watching, it means something in you already knows that the path forward is not found in certainty, but in surrender. Not in salvation, but in the sacred unrest of becoming. And so I ask you, what are you avoiding? What truth are you running from? Who would you be if no one else could define you? These questions are not meant to be answered with words. They are meant to haunt you, to stir you, to accompany you into the night like an invisible guide. Because this is not just a video, it is a mirror. And every second you watch, you are not learning about Sartre. You are remembering something you've forgotten about yourself. The flame, the silence, the terrifying call to wake up. Let it echo. Let it burn. Let it undo everything that made you small. But be warned, once you hear the whisper of freedom, you can never unhear it. Once you see the chains you've wrapped in velvet and called purpose, they can no longer protect you. The illusion begins to crack, and beneath it, there is nothing. Nothing. And you. This is the sacred threshold Sartre stood upon, not as a prophet of despair, but as a provocateur of awakening. He stripped existence of its masks and left us standing bare before the terrifying beauty of choice. And yet, in that terror, there is a strange peace. a peace that does not come from knowing what will happen, but from knowing that whatever happens, it is yours. Your decision, your responsibility, your becoming. So now the question is not, what is freedom? The question is, why are you still afraid of it? Is it because freedom destroys every excuse? Is it because it demands the death of your former self? Is it because once you admit you are free, you must also admit you are responsible for your pain, your healing, your failures, your silence? Sartre did not come to comfort the weak. He came to ignite the strong. And the strong are not those who conquer others, but those who dare to confront themselves. In the solitude of your room, in the hollow ache of your regrets, in the quiet places where no one applauds, there is your true battlefield, and that battlefield is sacred. Perhaps that is why you are here. Not by accident, not because of a title, but because you've felt something shifting, a quiet hunger, a mysterious call, a strange urgency that your current life, no matter how decorated, is still missing something essential. And that missing piece is not out there, it's within. But to access it, you must go through the fire of unlearning, the fire of saying no to roles you've mastered, the fire of reclaiming the choices you've buried under decades of obedience. That fire burns away the borrowed life and reveals the one that was always yours, waiting. And yes, it will hurt, but it will also resurrect. This journey does not promise clarity. It does not promise comfort, but it does promise awakening. And awakening is not a moment. It is a decision made again and again, every time you are tempted to go back to sleep. Sartre's voice is not gentle, but it is honest. He reminds us that we are not waiting for permission to be free. We are simply waiting for the courage to face ourselves. And when you do, the world shifts, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You are no longer a spectator. You are the author, the architect, the flame. And the fear that once imprisoned you becomes the very force that propels you into truth. So I leave you with this. What if your fear is sacred? What if your hesitation is holy ground? What if the very resistance you feel right now is not a barrier, but a doorway? Freedom is not found in escape. It is found in presence. And this moment right now is the threshold. Do not run. Do not distract yourself. Stay. Watch. Feel. There is something here for you. A key hidden in plain sight. And if you dare to keep going, if you dare to stay with the discomfort, you will find it. But you must be willing to lose everything that made you feel safe. Because freedom is not safe, it is sacred. And sacred things never come cheap. There comes a moment in every life when silence becomes unbearable. Not the silence around you, but the silence within. It is not quiet, it is screaming. A scream you've buried under years of compliance, under identities you never chose, under smiles you wore like armor. That scream is not pain. It is your soul knocking from the inside, demanding to be let out. Sartre called it nausea, a sudden, sickening awareness of the absurdity of everything you thought was real. But what if that nausea is a holy invitation? What if your discomfort is not a flaw to fix, but a signal to follow? What if what you're feeling is not weakness, but the first breath of awakening? You have lived long enough in borrowed meaning. You have served altars not your own. You have recited beliefs handed down to you like inheritance, without asking who first spoke them or why. But there is a moment, quiet and terrifying, when even the most sacred traditions can no longer carry your truth. That moment does not announce itself with lightning. It arrives in the emptiness after a victory that felt hollow. It whispers in the loneliness that returns even after applause. It speaks through the mirror when your eyes cannot lie. That is when you know. You must leave. the path you've mastered, and enter the wilderness of your own becoming. Sartre did not offer a map for that wilderness, only a mirror so honest it burns. He said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. Not what he inherits, not what he's told, but what he chooses." But how do you choose when every voice inside you was planted by someone else? How do you choose when freedom feels more like falling than flying? That is the fear most people never name, the fear of being, not of failing, not of judgment, but of truly existing without the safety net of roles, titles, expectations. That fear is sacred, because it means you are standing at the edge of your own truth, and nothing grows at the center of safety. So you begin to unlearn. You unlearn the applause that once guided your steps. You unlearn the guilt that kept you small. You unlearn the stories you told yourself to survive. And in the rubble of your old life, you wait, not for clarity, but for courage. Because clarity is a lie. Sartre taught us that there is no script, no divine blueprint. There is only existence, and the meaning you give it. And that responsibility is terrifying. But it is also holy, because it means that even your pain has not been wasted. Even your detours carry the seeds of truth. Even your doubts are sacred ground. The question is no longer, what should I do? But what am I willing to become? And here, in this sacred discomfort, something begins to shift. You stop asking for guarantees. You stop begging for signs. You start listening, not to the world, but to the quiet fire that never died inside you. It has been waiting for you to stop running, waiting for you to stop pretending, waiting for you to return, not to who you were, but to who you've always been. The child before the shame, the soul before the noise, the consciousness before the conditioning. That return is not regression, it is resurrection. But resurrection always requires death, not of the body, but of the illusions you mistook for self. So ask yourself, what are you still afraid to lose? What stories are still protecting you from freedom? What truths have you buried because they threatened the identity you worked so hard to construct? Sartre said that existence precedes essence. That means you are not bound by any definition, not even the ones you've built yourself. You are free, terrifyingly, beautifully free. And the only prison left is the one you're still guarding. But here's the miracle. At any moment, you can open the door. Not because someone told you to, not because the stars aligned, but because you chose. And in that choosing, you become what you were always meant to be. Not a follower, not a prisoner, but a flame. What if the very thing you crave most, freedom, is also the thing you secretly fear? In the deepest silence of your soul, have you ever heard a whisper that tells you, you were made to choose, but you've spent your life hiding from that choice? Sartre understood something the modern world refuses to admit. That human beings are not just capable of freedom, they are condemned to it. And in that condemnation lies both our terror and our glory. This is not a freedom without weight. It is the terrifying weight of responsibility, the anguish of realizing there is no map, no guarantee, no divine script to follow. Only your own trembling hands drawing the lines as you go. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that every excuse you've ever used, every "I had no choice," every "it was fate," every "they made me," was a lie you told yourself to escape the unbearable truth that you are the author of your life. Sartre called this bad faith, a betrayal not of others, but of yourself. It's the spiritual sleepwalking we perform to avoid the sacred terror of true responsibility. It's easier to wear a mask than to face the mirror. Easier to play the role society hands you than to stand naked before the void and say, "I will become." But what if your fear of freedom is the doorway to your soul's awakening? What if every moment of anxiety, of paralysis, of hesitation is actually an invitation, a sacred summons to rise? Sartre did not offer comfort. He offered confrontation. He didn't hand out answers. He illuminated the abyss and asked, "Now, who will you become in the face of nothingness?" His voice was not warm, but it was true. And truth, no matter how cold, burns with the fire of transformation. You were not born to be an echo. You were born to resound. Yet how many times have you silenced your voice to fit into cages that looked like comfort? How often have you swallowed your truth to belong to a world that is itself lost? Sartre's philosophy is not a philosophy of comfort. It is a spiritual alarm clock designed to shatter illusions. He invites you to wake up, not just from your sleep, but from your life as you've known it. To stop being a character and start being the writer. The fear of freedom is holy. It's a sign that you are standing at the threshold of something divine. Only souls that have glimpsed the vastness of their potential know the trembling of standing before it. This trembling is not weakness, it is reverence. The fear you feel is not of failing, but of finally becoming. You fear the weight of your wings before you remember that you were made to fly. If you listen closely, you'll hear the tension building, a sacred dissonance echoing inside you. It is the cry of the soul refusing to be caged any longer. Sartre does not offer escape, he offers exposure. He removes every crutch, every excuse, every external justification, until you are left alone with yourself. And in that solitude, terrifying and holy, something ancient begins to stir. The question is no longer, what should I do? But who must I become? We are always becoming. Whether by conscious creation or unconscious surrender, our lives take shape in every silent decision, every avoided truth. Every moment we either step forward or shrink back. Sartre believed that freedom is not found, it is forged, and it is. Forged not in light, but in fire. In that fire, illusions burn away, comfort dies, but something sacred survives, the birth of authenticity. Have you ever stood at the edge of a decision so profound it felt like the air itself was holding its breath? That moment is sacred. That is where the soul speaks. Sartre's call is to live in that space, unprotected, unmasked, unapologetically human. He invites us to enter the furnace of choice, where we are no longer spectators, but creators, not passers-by, but prophets of our own unfolding. To live authentically is not to be fearless, but to fear the right things, to fear silence when your truth longs to speak, to fear numbness more than pain, to fear the slow death of living a life that was never truly yours. Freedom is not the absence of chains. It is the courage to unchain yourself daily, relentlessly, lovingly. And that courage, Sartre believed, is what makes you divine. You were not sent into this world to conform. You were sent to confront. And not to confront the world first, but yourself. Sartre's wisdom is not for the faint of heart. It is for those who have heard the faint echo inside them that says, there must be more. That echo is real, and it grows louder every time you dare to listen. Welcome to the fire. Welcome to your freedom. Welcome to the terrifying, beautiful, sacred responsibility of becoming. There is a sacred silence that precedes every awakening, a moment when the noise of the world fades and only the whisper of your soul remains. Have you ever heard it? That quiet ache beneath your routine, that invisible pull inside your chest. When you're alone, that strange yearning you cannot explain. Sartre called it nausea, but it is not sickness. It is the spirit recognizing that the world you built around yourself was never real, that the roles you play, the habits you follow, the expectations you serve, were all scaffolding, hiding the raw truth. You are free. And with that freedom comes a question more haunting than any prison. Now, what will you do with it? You see, most people spend their lives running from this moment. They numb it with entertainment. They drown it in busy schedules. They silence it with shallow goals, because the truth is too heavy for a distracted heart. Sartre never gave you an escape route. He handed you a mirror and said, "Look." Not to admire yourself, but to see the truth that everything you do, everything you are, everything you feel, it all belongs to you. There is no script, no savior to choose for you, no fate to blame, no destiny to fall back on. There is only your will, trembling, waiting, burning beneath the surface. And isn't that terrifying? Isn't it easier to believe that someone else is in control? That your suffering is written in the stars? That your disappointments are part of some divine plan? But Sartre tells us there is no plan. There is only you, and the world you create with each decision, each delay, each surrender. This is not blasphemy. This is the sacred terror of responsibility. It is not an insult to God. It is the echo of God within you, saying, "I have given you the brush, now paint." We are all artists of our becoming, and yet most of us are painting by numbers, using someone else's palette, terrified to pick up a color that has no name. Freedom is not a gift we receive. It is a fire we must carry. Sartre knew that to be human is to hold that fire even when it burns us, even when it blinds us, even when it leaves us scorched and alone in the dark. Because that darkness is not emptiness, it is possibility. The canvas of your soul is blank, yes, but that means it is also infinite. How many times have you asked life to give you a sign when all along life was waiting for you to make a choice? How many moments have you called meaningless, simply because you refused to name them? Sartre's voice is a thunder inside the quiet. You are not what happens to you. You are what you do with it. Do you understand the magnitude of that truth? It means your past does not chain you. Your pain does not define you. Your history does not hold you hostage. Every moment is a new act. Every breath is a new beginning. But that freedom is not comfortable. It is agonizing. Because now you cannot blame your chains. You must blame your silence, your surrender, your refusal to rise. And yet, within that agony is your resurrection. Sartre is not handing you comfort. He is handing you the keys to your cell. But you must choose to open the door. You must choose to walk out. You must choose to live without excuses, without roles, without masks. That is the price of your soul's return. You were not born to live someone else's story. You were not sent here to blend in. You are not a copy. You are a cry. A cry from the universe, longing to express itself through you. And every time you ignore that cry, you suffer. Not because the world is cruel, but because you were made for truth. Sartre's truth is sharp, but it is sacred. It cuts through the illusions so that you may finally feel what it means to be alive, raw, real, unguarded, unchained. Have you ever felt the strange emptiness after achieving what you thought you wanted? That strange hollowness after applause, after approval, after success? Sartre knew that emptiness well. It is not a flaw. It is a doorway, a threshold, a sacred reminder that you were not made to consume. You were made to create, to define, to decide that nothing outside of you will ever be enough if what's inside you remains unlived. This is not motivation. This is confrontation, a confrontation with your own divine capacity. You are not small. You are vast. You are not meant to obey. You are meant to become. But becoming is a crucifixion. It is painful. It is lonely. It is sacred. And that is why most never walk this path. But if you are here, still listening, still breathing, still burning, then perhaps you were chosen to awaken. Not someday. Not when it's safe. But now. Sartre did not come to inspire you. He came to awaken you. And awakening is not a soft light at dawn. It is an earthquake, a storm. A voice that says, you can no longer pretend. Your time is now. Your silence has expired. Your freedom is calling, not as a privilege, but as a sacred duty. And only you can answer. Only you can rise. Only you can become. What if the fear you feel is not a sign of weakness, but a compass pointing to the edge of your becoming? What if the trembling you try so hard to suppress is not an error in your system, but the signal that your soul is nearing something sacred? Sartre never promised peace to the awakened. He offered confrontation, and not with society, not with fate, but with yourself. Because the first revolution is always internal, and the battlefield is your own hesitation. You see, freedom is not a concept. It's not an idea to be admired in books or debated in cafes. Freedom is flesh. It is blood. It is what you taste when you refuse to lie one more time. It is what pulses through your veins when you stop performing, when you stop apologizing for existing, when you stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Sartre saw this clearly. Freedom is not granted. It is seized. It must be taken from the hands of fear, ripped from the jaws of conformity, claimed in silence, alone, trembling. But freedom, in Sartre's world, is not joy, it is weight. And many cannot bear it. They would rather wear the mask. They would rather belong than exist. They would rather be accepted than be real. But what is the cost of that false belonging? A slow erosion of the soul. A quiet death of the self. Sartre does not shout, he whispers. And in that whisper is the fire. You are free, whether you like it or not. And that is the unbearable truth. Because if you are free, then every compromise is a choice. Every surrender is yours. Have you noticed how society rewards you for being predictable? How the world praises those who follow the script, who stay within the lines, who smile on cue. But Sartre breaks the frame. He says, you are not a role, you are not a function, you are not what others expect of you. You are the author, you are the actor, you are the stage. And the moment you realize that, the play begins to fall apart. The stage burns, the audience vanishes, and only you remain, naked, real, infinite. It is there, in that raw space between who you were and who you are becoming, that the terror lives. Sartre called it anguish, not because it is painful, but because it is divine. It is the ache of birth, the fire of awakening, the scream of existence trying to break through the skin of conditioning. Most turn back at this point. They return to safety. They choose comfort. But those who stay, those who sit in the fire, are reborn, not as someone new, but as someone true. Think about it. How many of your beliefs are truly yours? How many of your values did you choose, not inherit? How many of your fears are ancestral? Echoes that you've mistaken for instincts? Sartre does not blame you, but he calls you to responsibility. Because now that you've heard the whisper, now that the veil has lifted, you can no longer pretend. You are responsible for the self you allow to emerge. And that responsibility is not a punishment. It is sacred. Do you feel it? That pull inside, your ribs, like something ancient waking up. That's not anxiety. That's the soul recognizing that its cage has been opened. And yet, so many stare at the open door and choose to remain. Why? Because the unknown is too wide. Because freedom has no furniture, no map, no approval. But Sartre invites you into that empty room, not to scare you, but to reveal the truth. In nothingness, everything becomes possible. And that is the paradox, the gift wrapped in fear. When you finally step into the unknown, when you choose without excuse, act without permission, live without apology, you don't become chaotic. You become aligned. Because you are no longer reacting to life. You are creating it. And creation is holy. Sartre never claimed to be religious, but his truth is drenched in divinity. For what is more sacred than a human being who has become fully themselves? What is more miraculous than a life lived without disguise? You were not meant to echo someone else's voice. You were not born to fit into a pre-written script. You are not a repetition. You are a revelation of the divine freedom buried beneath generations of fear. Sartre's voice cuts through the centuries like a blade. Do not wait to be rescued. Rescue yourself. The walls are already crumbling. The locks are already broken. But you must walk out. And maybe that's what you're feeling now. That sacred trembling in your chest. It's not fear. It's calling. It's the universe pressing its palm against your heart, whispering, you are ready. Not perfect, not complete, but ready. Ready to burn the false and become the flame. Ready to say yes to the pain that purifies. Ready to stop hiding and start becoming. The time for masks has ended. The time for truth has begun. And truth, as Sartre knew, is never comfortable. But it is always holy. There is a silence within you that you've been trained to ignore. It hums beneath your thoughts, waiting. It is not quiet out of weakness. It is quiet because it is watching. It knows things that your mind cannot grasp. And Sartre knew this silence intimately. He didn't run from it. He leaned in. Because within that silence, there is a sacred confrontation. The moment where the masks slip, the noise fades, and you are forced to see yourself, not as you perform, but as you are. This is not a moment for the faint-hearted. It is a moment for the brave. And bravery, in Sartre's world, has nothing to do with triumph. It has everything to do with truth. Most people run from this encounter. They flood their days with distraction, noise, opinion, obligation. They mistake movement for meaning. But the silence does not go away. It waits. And when you are finally still enough, broken enough, or exhausted enough to hear it, it will speak, not with words, but with pressure, with an ache you cannot name, with a sense that something vital is missing, even if everything seems fine. That is not depression. That is your freedom knocking. Sartre believed hell was not a place. It was other people. But not because of their cruelty, because of the reflection. The way we shape ourselves to be seen. The way we contort, adjust, perform. We hand over the keys to our freedom just to avoid being rejected. But in that exchange, we lose our essence. We become echoes of what we think the world wants. And in doing so, we disappear. Not physically, but spiritually. That, Sartre warns, is the true death. But what if this isn't the end of you? What if this is the beginning, the sacred fracture before the rebirth? In the philosophy of Sartre, every crisis is a doorway. Every breakdown is a revelation. You are not crumbling, you are shedding. Shedding the skin that was never yours, shedding the roles you inherited, shedding the fear that was passed down like a curse. You are not breaking, you are becoming. And to become is to burn. To walk through the fire, not to be destroyed, but to be clarified. Yes, it hurts. Freedom is not a gentle liberation, it is a divine disorientation. It will ask you to abandon everything you were told you had to be. It will confront your loyalties, your patterns, your comforts. It will not give you safety, it will give you sight. Sartre's path is not soft, it is surgical, it cuts deep. But every cut reveals something pure, something unbending, something eternal. And that something is you. And yet you may still ask, why me? Why now? Why this pain? But the question is not why. The question is, will you answer? Will you let this discomfort lead you? Will you stop numbing the ache and begin to translate it? Because hidden inside every fear is an instruction, a sacred blueprint, a calling etched into your bones. Sartre didn't want you to escape life. He wanted you to face it, not as a victim, not as a follower, but as a creator. You were not born to be manageable. You were born to disturb the silence, to rearrange the order, to pierce through illusion. And that calling will never leave you, not because it's cruel, but because it is the truth. It knows who you are beneath the hesitation. It knows the version of you that hasn't yet been revealed. Sartre's voice calls not to the mind, but to the spirit. Do not settle. Do not shrink. Do not conform. Not because rebellion is heroic, but because it is necessary for the soul to breathe. There is no formula for this path, no instructions, no guarantees. There is only this, your next honest choice, and then another, and then another. Sartre did not offer comfort. He offered clarity. The clarity that comes when you stop waiting for permission and start walking in your own authority. The clarity that breaks chains not with force, but with recognition. The clarity that whispers, you are free, not later, not when you're healed. Now, so many spend their lives waiting for the right moment, the right sign, the right feeling. But freedom is not a matter of timing, it is a matter of truth. And the truth is this, you have always been able to choose. Even your indecision was a decision. Even your silence was a voice. Even your stillness was movement. Sartre's existentialism is not a curse, it is a mirror. One that refuses to lie. One that reveals what you have tried to forget. You are responsible for the self you become. And maybe that's why you're here. Maybe this is not just a video. Maybe this is your invitation. A sacred interruption. A crack in the rhythm of your illusions. A whisper cutting through the noise. Not to shame you. Not to scare you. But to call you back to the place where your freedom was buried. Sartre is not asking you to believe anything. He is asking you to see. And once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you awaken, you cannot return. Once you hear the call, you must answer, or live forever haunted by the silence. You've heard the silence. You've felt its weight pressing against your ribcage, echoing behind your thoughts, threading itself through your quiet moments. But here's what you've refused to admit. That silence is not empty. It's not a void. It's a question you've been too afraid to answer. Sartre understood this intimately. He saw that the silence we try to escape is the voice of our freedom, waiting for us to listen. Not to obey, not to follow, but to choose. Because every moment you delay that choice, you are building your own cage, brick by brick, excuse by excuse. And one day, you wake up and wonder how you became a stranger to yourself. You call it confusion. You call it anxiety. You call it burnout. But Sartre called it something else, abandonment. Not by God, not by the world, but by yourself. You've abandoned your freedom in exchange for comfort. You've traded your voice for peace. You've surrendered your will to the illusion of stability. But nothing is stable when you are not standing in truth. Nothing is peaceful when your soul is at war with your patterns. And the longer you pretend not to hear that war, the louder it becomes. And what if the pain you're feeling isn't a punishment, but a prophecy? What if your suffering is not the end, but the signal? You were not made to drift, you were made to decide. And yes, Sartre reminds us that decision comes with weight, with nausea, with dread. But he also tells us that within that nausea lies your divine inheritance, the unshakable, irreversible reality that you are free, that no one is coming to define you, that no one can. Because even when you are imprisoned by circumstance, your soul remains sovereign. But the question remains, will you claim that sovereignty? Will you take back the throne of your existence, even if it costs you the approval of the world? Because Sartre never promised that freedom would feel good. He only promised it was real. And once you know it's real, you can't go back. Not without dying a little more each day. Not without burying your spirit under layers of false belonging and scripted identity. And the longer you delay your truth, the heavier your mask becomes. Until one day, it's no longer a mask. It's your face. So many of us are walking through life wearing identities that were never ours, labels we inherited, roles we accepted out of guilt, dreams that aren't ours but made others comfortable. And we call it success. We call it adulthood. But it's a burial, a silent, slow burial of the self. Sartre didn't want to wake you from sleep. He wanted to wake you from disappearance. Because when you deny your freedom, you don't just betray your soul, you become invisible to yourself. Present in body, absent in essence. But here's the terrifying grace of Sartre's vision. It's never too late to return, to choose again, to wake. You can reclaim your life, not by redoing the past, but by responding, fully, fiercely, and without apology, to this present moment. The moment you're in right now. The breath you're holding, the ache in your chest, that is the sacred threshold. That is where you begin. Not once you've figured it all out. Not once you feel ready. But now. Because readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision, and that decision will cost you. Sartre never denied that. It will cost you your false certainty, your borrowed beliefs, your comfortable self-deceptions. But what you gain is worth everything, your soul's alignment with its own truth. A life lived not by default, but by design. A consciousness unchained from expectation. A presence so rooted in itself that even silence becomes a symphony. Because the awakened soul does not need noise. It carries its own music, composed in the key of truth. So if you're trembling, good. If you're afraid, even better. Because fear is not the enemy. It is the flame at the edge of the sacred. Fear shows you where you've placed the borders of your identity. Sartre's invitation is to walk past those borders, trembling and all, into the wild unknown of your own possibility. To stop asking what the world wants from you, and start asking what truth is asking of you. And that question will not let you go until it is answered with your life. This is not about perfection. It's not about fixing yourself. It's about seeing yourself, unfiltered, unmasked, unafraid. It's about meeting your own gaze in the mirror and not looking away. Sartre's path is not lined with comfort. It is lined with confrontation. But every confrontation brings you closer to your essence. And your essence is not broken. It is waiting, patiently, powerfully, persistently, for the moment you stop performing and start becoming. So here we are. Not at the end, but at the edge. The edge of who you were and who you're about to be. The edge of silence and revelation. The edge of comfort and calling. And only one question remains. Will you cross it? Or will you return to the illusion, knowing now what you know? Because the moment you heard these words, the illusion cracked. The lie lost its grip. And the truth, raw, holy, undeniable, is standing in front of you, whispering the same things Sartre whispered to his generation. You are free, now prove it. You were taught to be afraid of the dark, but no one warned you about the light that exposes, the light that doesn't comfort, but confronts. Sartre knew this well. True freedom is not the soothing balm of certainty. It is the blinding flash that reveals everything you've tried to hide. That's why you hesitate. That's why you cling to the familiar, even if it's painful. Because the familiar, at least, doesn't ask anything of you. But freedom. Freedom demands everything. And deep down, you know that. You feel that. You've always known. You say you're tired, but it's not your body that's exhausted. It's your soul, worn thin from carrying a life that does not belong to it. A life scripted by others, stitched together from roles and expectations that never truly fit. And still, you try to make it work. You smile when you want to scream. You nod when you want to weep. You stay when your spirit is begging you to leave. Why? Because the unknown terrifies you more than the pain you already understand. But Sartre's voice breaks through that illusion with unsettling clarity. You are the author of this script, even if you've forgotten how to hold the pen. And now the pen is back in your hand. Trembling, heavy, sacred. You can rewrite this. You can say no where you once said yes. You can walk away from the lie. You can step into the unformed chaos of truth. But you must choose, and you must accept the consequences. That is the cost of freedom. There is no one else to blame, no fate to curse, no God to absolve you. In Sartre's world, freedom is both gift and burden, a divine paradox. It liberates you, even as it demands your absolute accountability. But do not mistake accountability for punishment. It is power. It is the sacred fire of self-possession. And once you step into it, you begin to understand what Sartre meant when he said, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." Not what the world makes of him. Not what the past defines him as. Not what trauma or failure whispers in his ear. But what he chooses, again and again, in the silence between breaths. That silence is not absence. It is altar. It is where you meet yourself. And yet, there is something almost unbearable about that meeting. To look into the mirror without distortion. To see, perhaps for the first time, that you are not a victim of life's randomness, but a participant in your own becoming. This is the terror Sartre speaks of. Not that we are powerless, but that we are powerful beyond what we're ready to handle. That we are the architects of our own prisons, and therefore also the architects of our liberation. But only if we're willing to demolish the lies we've mistaken for shelter. The question then becomes, are you ready to become dangerous to the version of you that survives on pretending? Because this journey does not flatter your ego. It does not coddle your fear. It confronts you with everything you've denied, avoided, and suppressed. And still, it invites you in. Because this isn't about self-improvement. It's about self-remembrance. Sartre didn't offer comfort. He offered confrontation as a doorway to awakening. And the only way to walk through that door is to stop, waiting for permission. Permission will never come, because no one else can grant you the authority to be who you are. That authority was stitched into your soul before you ever learned to doubt it. You are not waiting for the right moment. This is the moment. The tremor in your chest, the tightening in your throat, the quiet ache behind your eyes. These are not signs of weakness. They are birth pangs. They are the signals that something within you is ready to emerge. Not something new, but something ancient, something original, something real. And realness always feels like risk at first. Because you've spent years rehearsing roles of the dutiful child, the dependable partner, the stable adult. But none of those roles can carry the weight of your soul. They crumble under the pressure of your truth. And your truth does not negotiate. It does not ask nicely. It breaks. It burns, and then it rebuilds. Not as a copy of someone else's idea of success, but as the living expression of your own unfiltered essence. That's the revolution Sartre calls you into. So let this be the moment where something breaks. Not you, but the illusion. The story that you had to be small. The belief that freedom was dangerous. The lie that you were meant to survive rather than to live. Break it. Because only in that breaking can the sacred be born. Sartre understood. Despair is not the end. It's the soil, the fertile ground where new meaning grows. And that meaning doesn't come from outside. It emerges from your choice to be fully, fiercely alive, no matter the cost. Now breathe. You are not lost. You are arriving. Not at a destination, but at a beginning that was always waiting for your yes. You've traveled far in circles of denial, but the spiral now turns inward, toward the center, toward home. And even though you tremble, even though you don't yet know what's next, freedom has already begun its song within you. The fear you feel is sacred. The ache is sacred. The trembling is sacred. Because it means you are waking. And the world has not yet seen who you truly are. The final fear is not death, it is awakening. The part of you that hesitates right now is not weak, it is sacred. It is the guardian of thresholds, the trembling presence at the gate of transformation. Sartre knew this tension intimately. Not as a philosopher locked in theory, but as a soul who stared into the unbearable brightness of truth. He saw that most people prefer the security of falsehood over the chaos of self-becoming. But you, right now, stand on the edge. And something within you refuses to look away, something holy. You've been told that surrender is failure. But what if surrender is the highest form of strength? Not surrender to others, not surrender to fate, but surrender to the truth that you are terrifyingly free, and that freedom will never feel safe, because it is not designed for comfort, it is designed for creation. And to create yourself anew, you must walk through the ashes of what no longer serves. Sartre whispers through time, existence precedes essence, which means you were not born with meaning. You were born with the power to shape it. That power has been buried under years of noise, expectations, roles, shame, religion distorted into cages, culture flattened into obedience, even your dreams reshaped into palatable goals that offend no one and awaken nothing. But the truth cannot be buried forever. It always resurfaces, and that's what you feel now. The stirring, the ache, the restless pulse behind your ribs. This is not anxiety. It is your soul pounding on the walls of your confinement, demanding to be known. The world taught you to fear this voice, to medicate it, to silence it, to pray it away. But Sartre would tell you, the voice is not your enemy. It is your compass. The discomfort is not a signal to retreat, but a call to dig deeper, into the abyss of choice, into the vast, unlit terrain of your freedom. There are no maps here, no signposts, only the echo of your heartbeat and the weight of your gaze turned inward. You are not here to follow. You are here to become. And in becoming, you will lose things. You will be misunderstood. You will be judged. You will grieve the masks that once protected you. But in their place, you will uncover something so holy it cannot be explained, only lived. The sacred clarity of presence, the courage to stand alone, the luminous weight of authenticity. Sartre never offered easy answers. He offered mirrors. And in those mirrors, we do not see perfection. We see responsibility, the divine terror of knowing that no one is coming to save us. Because we were never meant to be saved. We were meant to awaken. So you must ask yourself now, are you willing to disappoint the world in order to be faithful to your soul? Are you ready to be misunderstood by the masses in order to be recognized by yourself? This is not a question of morality. It is a question of alignment, of integrity, of finally standing in the light of your own becoming without apology. This is not arrogance. This is reverence. Reverence for the sacred task of living truthfully, even when it costs you everything that was never real. And as you stand here bare, trembling and holy, you may feel the urge to turn back. That's normal. That's human. Even Christ wept in Gethsemane. Even Sartre doubted. But they still walked forward. Because there comes a moment when retreat is no longer an option, when the truth inside you grows louder than the noise around you, when the fire refuses to be contained. That moment is not in the distance. It is here, now, in the breath you're taking, in the silence between words, in the stillness that holds you like a womb preparing you to be born again. Do not rush this birth. Do not force clarity where mystery is still at work. The soul unfolds in spirals, not straight lines, and you are still spiraling inward, toward the center, toward the source, toward the unbearable light that reveals all and forgives nothing, but heals everything through truth. Sartre's voice may seem harsh to some, but to those ready for liberation, it is medicine, because he does not flatter the ego. He liberates the essence, and that is what you came here for, even if you forgot. So let this be your vow. Not to become someone new, but to remember who you are beneath all that you've carried, to shed the false armor, to step into the raw beauty of truth, to become so real that the world has no choice but to respond in kind. This is not a performance. This is a prayer. Not the kind whispered in temples, but the kind lived with every breath. Your freedom is not in the future. It is in your next choice, your next no, your next yes. Choose with reverence. Choose with fire. Choose with tears in your eyes and hope in your bones, because this is not the end. It is the edge of something holy, and what waits beyond it is not certainty, but wonder, not safety, but soul, not peace as the world defines it, but peace that passes understanding, the kind of peace that only comes when you stop pretending. When you say yes to the sacred terror of being fully alive. Sartre did not offer a path for the faint of heart, but for those who dare like you, it is a doorway. And on the other side is not perfection, but presence. Here is the final emotional, symbolic, and unforgettable closure for your video. Jean-Paul Sartre, How to Conquer Your Fear of Freedom. It has exactly 10 poetic, emotionally ascending paragraphs, around 6,000 characters, and follows. Your precise instructions. A seamless closing crescendo that resonates like the final note of a sacred symphony, designed to leave a soul-deep imprint. Some truths do not end. They expand. They echo. They settle into the silence of our nights and into the slow breaths we take when no one is watching. This journey was never about learning Sartre. It was about remembering yourself. Not the self the world painted for you, but the hidden one, the sacred one, who has always waited beneath your hesitation. Now, in the afterglow of these words, something stirs. Not loud, not proud, but real. A quiet knowing that you can never unknow again. The fear you once held like armor now lies on the floor, transparent and irrelevant, because you've seen it, not as a monster, but as a shadow of the light you are capable of carrying. Sartre was never trying to scare you. He was handing you a mirror no one else dared to offer. And in it, you saw not your flaws, but your unfinishedness, the divine rawness of a life not yet chosen. You were never supposed to be complete. You were meant to be free, and freedom now no longer feels like a threat. It feels like a field at dawn, unwritten, unspoiled, untamed. You are the author now, not of fiction, but of essence, not of roles, but of reverence. And maybe that terrifies you still, but maybe, just maybe, it also awakens something ancient. A memory older than fear, a whisper that says, you were born for this, for the trembling, for the undoing, for the unbearable beauty of truth without a script. Do you feel it? That subtle shifting inside? That breath that tastes different? That sense that something invisible has been rearranged? This is not entertainment. This is soul work. What just unfolded before your eyes was not merely a video, it was a ceremony of unmasking. And you were not an observer. You were the altar, the sacred space where philosophy met spirit and where ideas ceased to be concepts and became living invitations. What if you've never truly been lost? What if you've only been asleep inside someone else's dream? And now, finally, the alarm didn't ring. The silence did. The silence that carries meaning, that dares you to reclaim it. That does not tell you what to do, but who you already are when nothing and no one is pulling the strings. You don't need a map. You are the direction. You are the question. You are the answer trying to remember its own name. There is something holy in the fact that no one can walk this path for you. And yet, in watching, in feeling, in trembling, you were never alone. There are others, like you, quiet warriors, inner rebels, souls that have outgrown the script and are now writing verses in the dark. You may never meet them, but you will recognize them in the gaze of someone who has also let go of pretending. We do not need to shout to know we belong. We breathe differently. We walk lighter. So now what remains? A choice. Not the loud kind, not the public kind, but the eternal kind. The kind that doesn't need witnesses, only honesty. Will you return to the comfortable lie, or will you step, unarmed and unmasked, into the truth that has always haunted you because it is yours? This moment does not demand perfection, only presence, only permission to no longer betray the soul that has waited so long for you to listen. Because somewhere deep beneath all the noise, there is a voice. It does not scream, it does not argue. It simply says, "You are free. You have always been." And your fear is not the enemy, it is the doorway. You conquer it not by erasing it, but by walking through it, with your eyes open and your soul awake. This is not the end. This is a beginning disguised as silence. A revolution that happens, not outside but within, one choice at a time, one breath at a time. And maybe, days from now, while washing your hands or staring at a leaf trembling in the wind, this truth will return, not as a thought, but as a vibration. As a memory your bones never forgot, that you were not made to be safe. You were made to be real, to walk with trembling dignity toward your own becoming. And if you remember nothing else from this entire journey, let it be this: freedom is not given, it is remembered. If this awakening moved you, if something inside was cracked open and now breathes differently, then leave your trace. Like a soul carving initials into the bark of a sacred tree, write in the comments how to conquer your fear of freedom, not as a slogan, but as your vow. Share this video like someone offering a lantern in a world of sleepwalkers. Subscribe, not for numbers, but to become part of a gathering, an invisible cathedral of souls choosing truth over comfort. This is not a goodbye, this is a beginning, and the echo will live wherever you carry it.